Welcome to this lecture on the principles of ecology. Today, we are going to explore one of the most fascinating and foundational ideas in biology, the ecological niche concept. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how millions of species manage to coexist on our planet without driving each other to extinction. Let us start with a simple analogy. Imagine you are walking through a bustling city. If you know someone's home address, you know where they live, but you still do not know what they do for a living. In ecology, a species' habitat is exactly like its address, but its ecological niche is its profession or job. The niche describes exactly how an organism makes a living, what it eats, when it sleeps, and how it survives in its specific environment. Understanding this job helps us see how every species fits into the complex machinery of nature. Now that we have our analogy, let us look at the formal scientific definition. An ecological niche is defined as the complete set of environmental conditions, resources, and interactions that a species needs to survive, grow, and reproduce. It is not just about the physical space. It includes the temperature range the species can tolerate, the specific size of the food it eats, and how much sunlight or water it requires. Every single factor that contributes to the survival and reproductive success of the organism is a vital part of its ecological niche. Building on this definition, we come to a famous model proposed by ecologist G. Evelyn Hutchinson. He described the niche as an n-dimensional hypervolume. I know this sounds incredibly complex, but it is actually a very elegant idea. It simply means we can take many different environmental factors, like temperature, humidity, and food size, and treat each one as a mathematical dimension. When we plot all these dimensions together on a graph, they carve out a specific multidimensional shape or space. That exact space represents the precise conditions under which that specific species can exist. Hutchinson also gave us another crucial distinction by dividing the niche into two parts. First is the fundamental niche. This is the massive dream scenario, the full potential role a species could play if there were absolutely no competitors around. However, nature is crowded. This brings us to the realized niche, which is the smaller, actual role the species plays, because it has to share the world with competing species. The realized niche is always smaller because the harsh reality of competition forces species to restrict their activities and resource use just to survive. Let us visualize this concept with a diagram. Look at the horizontal axis, which represents an environmental gradient, like temperature. The vertical axis shows resource use or population size. The large, wide dashed curve shows the fundamental niche, the broad range of temperatures the species could theoretically survive in. But notice the solid blue curve inside it. This is the realized niche. The red shaded regions on the edges are the zones of competition. In these zones, other species outcompete our organism, forcing it to shrink its actual living space into that narrower, realized niche. This visual restriction leads us to a very important rule in ecology. Why is the niche concept the master key to understanding biodiversity? Because of the competitive exclusion principle. This principle states that if two different species try to occupy the exact same niche in the exact same location, they cannot coexist peacefully. They will compete intensely for the exact same resources until one species is completely eliminated or driven to extinction. To survive, species must adapt and carve out their own unique, slightly different roles, which is why millions of species can live together on Earth. Beyond theory, the niche concept has critical real-world applications. Conservationists rely heavily on this idea to save endangered species. By understanding a species' exact niche, we can ensure all its specific environmental requirements are met in protected habitats. Furthermore, this concept helps us predict the devastating impacts of invasive species. If an invasive species arrives and has the exact same niche as a native species, the competitive exclusion principle kicks in. The invader can easily outcompete, starve, and ultimately destroy the local wildlife. Understanding niches is literally a matter of life and death for ecosystems. To study these interactions scientifically, ecologists need a way to measure exactly how broad or narrow a species' niche is. This brings us to two main types of organisms. A species that eats many different things and can live in many conditions has a broad niche. We call this a generalist. On the other hand, a species that eats only one specific thing has a narrow niche and is called a specialist. To truly compare them, we cannot just use descriptions. We need a mathematical tool to calculate a single number representing this dietary flexibility. This mathematical tool is known as Levin's measure of niche breadth. The formula looks at the proportion of different resources a species uses. Let us break down the symbols. The capital letter B represents the niche breadth itself. The variable n is the total number of different resource categories available in the environment, like different types of seeds. The variable p sub I represents the decimal proportion of the species' total diet that comes from that specific resource. We square each proportion, add them all up, and divide 1 by that sum. If a species relies heavily on one resource, the denominator becomes large, making B very small, which indicates a specialist. Let us see this formula in action with a generalist bird, the common finch. We are given that its diet consists of 30% small seeds, 40% medium seeds, and 30% large seeds. We want to calculate its niche breadth. First, we convert these percentages into decimal proportions, 0.30, 0.40, and 0.30. Next, we square each decimal individually. This squaring step is crucial because it mathematically penalizes uneven resource use. Adding these squared values gives us a denominator of 0.34. Finally, dividing 1 by 0.34 gives us approximately 2.94. Since the maximum possible value for 3 resources is exactly 3, this high score proves the finch is a highly adaptable generalist. Now, let us compare this to a specialist bird in the exact same forest, the specialized crossbill. We are given its diet is 5% small seeds, 90% medium seeds, and 5% large seeds. Notice the heavy reliance on just one resource. We convert to decimals, 0.05, 0.90, and 0.05. When we square these, the large decimal remains relatively large at 0.81, while the small ones become almost negligible. Adding them up gives a much larger denominator of 0.815. Dividing 1 by this sum gives a niche breadth of approximately 1.23. This very low score mathematically proves strict specialization, meaning this bird would be in extreme danger if medium seeds disappeared. To summarize our lecture, remember that an ecological niche is much more than just the physical space an organism occupies. It is its complete functional role or profession within the ecosystem. We learned that the fundamental niche is a dream scenario of unlimited potential, while the realized niche is the harsh reality shaped by competition. The competitive exclusion principle ensures that no two species can occupy the exact same niche indefinitely. Finally, by using mathematical tools like Levin's niche breadth, we can quantify exactly how specialized or generalized a species is, helping ecologists protect biodiversity and manage habitats effectively. You now have a solid understanding of the ecological niche concept.